Our story begins as early as 10,000 BC. Archaeological evidence suggests that hunter-gatherer societies occupied the region of modern-day Colombia as far back as the late Pleistocene era. Over thousands of years, these early groups would then slowly transition into more settled agricultural societies, paving the way for relatively complex indigenous civilizations by around 1500 BC. In the following centuries and millennium, a number of indigenous groups known today would begin to emerge, each with their own societal traditions. Such traditions commonly included a strong focus on intensive agriculture, weaving, organised religion, class structures, and sometimes, to a lesser extent, the use of matrilineality to determine the inheritance of leadership roles. Many, though far from all of these groups, would also share various language families such as Chibchan, common throughout the regions of now modern-day Colombia, Panama, and Costa Rica. These communities were not, however, united politically. As a matter of fact, many would stand in political rivalry, sometimes even giving way to large-scale warfare. Additionally, beyond broad similarities, the many distinct biomes across the region would give way to significant cultural distinctions between groups. Societies in the Andes Highlands, for instance, were in large part culturally disparate to, say, groups in the Caribbean region. Within each region, however, groups would often share a number of cultural commonalities. To start us off, therefore, I thought it might be helpful to describe some of the common cultural traditions in just a few of these geographic zones. We'll begin with the Andean Highlands. This region was occupied by some of the more socially and politically complex societies, including the Muisca, the Guane, the Lache, and the Sutagao. These civilizations consisted of highly organized chiefdoms, meaning that they were governed under centralized regional chiefs, such as the Zipa and the Zaque among the Muisca. They were commonly known for their strong religious institutions, which included temple complexes and priesthoods, intensive crop production, and oftentimes, particularly among the Muisca, a practice of matrilineal leadership inheritance, as alluded to earlier. Perhaps most famously, however, were their vast exchange networks, which traded salt, textiles, emeralds, and even gold, the latter of which carried significant value both symbolically and practically among the elite. Muisca tunjos, for instance, essentially miniature gold humans, animals, or deities, would be deposited into temples and other sacred places as offerings, with the intention of invoking divine favour. Other objects, meanwhile, would be used as burial offerings, ceremonial items, and diplomatic gifts used to seal alliances. Many of these objects were highly intricate by design and symbolised important cultural values such as fertility, social rank, and even spiritual beliefs. Typically, objects used in the region were crafted by highly skilled hereditary goldsmiths among the Muisca, along with the Quimbaya and Tolima communities to the west and southwest. Moving on from the Andean Highlands, let's next take a look at the communities in the Caribbean region. Firstly, we have the Caribbean lowlands, represented by communities such as the Zenu, the Chimila, the Mocana, and the Wayu, all of whom still occupy the region somewhat autonomously to this day, particularly the Wayu. These groups were known to be more decentralized compared to those in the Andean Highlands, with some groups even maintaining a structure of clans. They'd often consist of sedentary farming and trading societies, with many living permanently throughout dispersed towns. As societies located throughout both wetlands and dry scrublands, these groups were highly acclaimed for their engineering feats such as dikes, along with their large irrigation networks in river valleys used to support agriculture. Beyond the lowlands, we also have the Caribbean's northern highlands, namely the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta. This region was, and in some cases still is, home to groups including the Tairona, the Canquamo, the Kogi, the Ahuaco, and the Wiwa, mountain-dwelling societies commonly known for their unique spiritual beliefs, which were often tied to nature and ecological cosmology. Such beliefs would also emphasize the importance of social harmony over ideas of conquest or expansion, a notable distinction from many other civilizations. In terms of leadership, these communities were typically governed by theocratic rule, with elders and spiritual leaders known as mamos claiming moral authority. In terms of settlement, groups in this region were often known to build stone cities, such as the site now called Ciudad Perdida, the ruins of which can still be found today. Moving much further south, we next come to the Amazon Basin region, home to a high concentration of surviving autonomous communities even today, including the Ticuna, the Huitoto, the Bora, the Cubeo, and the Yucuna. These societies were largely known for their semi-nomadic lifestyles, which would see them relocate periodically, often influenced by natural resource availability and horticultural cycles. Speaking of horticulture, a clear point of distinction for these groups was their practice of slash-and-burn agriculture, a farming methodology that involves clearing small patches of forest before burning felled vegetation, thereby releasing vital nutrients into the otherwise nutrient-poor rainforest soil. This in turn would allow for the cultivation of crops in the rainforest, such as cassava, plantain, and maize. Beyond farming methodology, another notable distinction for the Amazonian peoples were their egalitarian structures consisting of kinship clans, which were often far less hierarchical than groups of other regions. Their spiritual beliefs, meanwhile, would stand out for their emphasis on shamanism, animism, and oral tradition, the latter of which distinguished these societies for their rich mythology. These beliefs would also be intensely ritualized through major ceremonial practices, with some groups, for instance, utilizing ayahuasca to induce intense psychedelic experiences. So those were just a few of the distinct cultures found across the region that's now Colombia. However, I should note that there are also several other distinct cultural geographic zones. These include the Orinoco region, the Cauca Valley and Western Cordillera slopes, the Pacific Choco rainforest and mangrove coast, along with the upper and middle Magdalena Valley. Together, these combined regions, now known as Colombia, would support by around 1500 BC an estimated 3 to 10 million across dozens of separate societies. Today, meanwhile, Colombia recognises 115 indigenous peoples, who represent around 10% of the population. Sadly, the Spanish conquest did reduce their population significantly, which I'll get into later, though many of their ancestors do continue to uphold cultural traditions and in some cases, even operate with societal autonomy. Alright, so now we know a bit about Colombia's original inhabitants, it's time to talk about the Spanish.